There were definitely some. At one point, we changed the size of the mixing chamber because we realized we needed a bigger mixing chamber to allow us to be operating within the chamber at a lower pressure. We didn't want to be feeding such high pressure to the proportional solenoid valve, and so we switched up our design. But that had space requirements. Because the bigger mixing chamber, we didn't want to go taller, so we went longer, but longer then meant bigger footprint, which then changed what the enclosure was working on. We had a couple electronics things that required some changes, mostly related to wiring and making sure we had enough grounding and power to the appropriate devices. Some things are running on 3.3 volts, some things are running on 5 volt. We needed to get various adapters, so we had to ensure that worked out okay. We had a couple little valves that we needed to put in place. There's one on the expiratory line, that's the one that's leaving the patient, but we needed a one-way valve so the patient can't accidentally breathe back in the air that they've just breathed out. We had a really tough time trying to find one of these valves. We finally found one. It's not exactly one I would use for a final product, but to be able to show for a test, that's used for CPR masks or CPR units. And so we were able to source them. They came really quickly, but dimensionally they were all wrong from what we had planned. So we had to reprint some 3D print some tubing so that we could connect those pieces together. So there were little changes on that kind of level, but if you look at the system diagram that we laid out, even in the abstract, that system diagram looks very similar to the one we had in round one, which looks very similar to what our final one is. It's just, little tiny pieces changed here and there as we got to know the details more. And going forward, to take this to production, I would say more details will change, because you don't want to use this one-way valve from the CPR mask, because it's really not quite the right valve for this application. It works in a pinch, works for this first test, but isn't something you'd use permanently. Maybe one of the solenoid valves is a little bit sort of too powerful, too industrial for what one would need for a longer term thing. We could get it really fast for this particular purpose, so it was good for us to use then, but it isn't something that I would use, going forward if I were going to make 10,000 of these. So you make different decisions at different points along the design process, depending on what you're trying to demonstrate and what kinds of questions you're trying to answer.